I think a lot of people are expecting me tonight to focus in on abortion and what can the church do about politicians who are pro-abortion. Well, hang on. We have to do a little bit more outlining before we can even get to that, because I don't think that abortion is the major issue at the moment. You're saying to yourself, well, what is the major issue? The major issue at the moment is religious freedom. If we do not have religious freedom, we are going to be helpless in fighting the terrible Holocaust of millions of babies taking place in our country since 1973. So let's talk about religious freedom, and then we'll try to talk about how abortion fits into the picture of we are involved in a cataclysmic election. And some people will say, well, it's the most important election of all time. Well, I think it might be on a par with the election of Abraham Lincoln, because there are not only religious freedom issues here, but there are also issues that have to deal with the Constitution. Constitution gives us our religious freedom. And what is presently going on in our country is an attack against the churches. Catholic Church in particular. Why? We're the biggest guy on the block, number one. Number two, we are a hierarchical church. And that means that we have a form and we have an embedded system of leadership. And we also have a way of getting out the message and teaching, just as we are doing right now. Over these months, you have all been suffering. I know you've been suffering a great deal in Michigan from the coronavirus, and your governess has not been very, very kind to people who don't want to exactly follow all of her instructions. I think that what we're seeing here, not just in Michigan, but around the country, in certain states and in certain cities, there is an animus toward religion, toward the Catholic Church. And I'm going to also mention another group of churches that have tremendous influence, but not as big as the Catholic Church, the Bible-based churches. These Bible-based churches, because they have a foundation in the truth, they know that abortion is evil. Therefore, Bible-based churches and the Catholic Church are being attacked. And for the most part, the attacks that are going on are rather obvious. Some of you, I am sure, have been reading about what has taken place in San Francisco. Just a few days ago, Archbishop Cordileone, what did he do? He had a protest march. Why? Because the city of San Francisco has basically closed the churches. They've limited the number of people who can go to church, one person at a time in the church. Outside the church, no bigger than a dozen people. Who is kidding whom? What is this all about? If Walmart can open and the supermarkets can open, why can't the churches open? And this happened in other places too. It's happening in New York, it's happening in New Jersey, it happened in Minnesota, and I know it happened too in Michigan. So what do you want to do? You want to close down the churches. Why? Because the churches that I mentioned, the Catholic Church, the Pentecostal churches, the Bible-based churches, they have a message that is contrary to the message that is being sent out by the opposition. And who is the opposition? The opposition are those people who want to silence the voice of religion, because religion gets in the way of a grand plan. And what's the grand plan? The grand plan is that human beings create their own world. They create their own society, not according to God's law, not according to reason, not according to the Bible, not according to the churches, but who? But according to human beings who decide that they can make it up on their own. And in order to do that, what do you have to do? You have to tear down. You have to tear down the structures. The churches are always the first to go. And this is what happened. You know, this is what happened in Russia, in China. What do? They go after the churches, and they close down the churches. And the churches are still being persecuted in communist countries. Are we leaning toward communism? I think so. Many will say, well, it's socialism. It's not quite communism. No, my friends, socialism leads to communism, and God does not fit into the picture. Go, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, China. What's going on in these places? Destruction of the churches. Haven't we seen our churches burned? Haven't we seen the statues decapitated? Haven't we seen crosses burned? Beautiful works of art destroyed. Why? You've got to get God out of the picture. Once God is out of the way, what happens? We become God. You know, eat the forbidden fruit and you will become like God, and you create the world according to your own lights. That's what is going on. Now, you might think to yourself, well, that's all theory, and maybe he's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. Oh, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Let me tell you what is going on, very, very practically speaking. You have all heard of the case of the Little Sisters of the Poor, haven't you? Now you say, well, the Little Sisters of the Poor, they don't have to include abortifacients and contraception in their healthcare policy. The Supreme Court just settled that in Pennsylvania versus the Little Sisters. Well, it's not permanent. It's a time-conditioned ruling. Why? It simply says that the administration can expand the meaning of Obamacare's order that said only churches can apply for the exemption. Churches, the individual parish church itself. It did not apply to church organizations, did not apply to the Little Sisters of the Poor, did not apply to hospitals, did not apply to Catholic colleges and universities, did not apply. The court said the administration can widen that so it does now apply to church organizations. However, when a new administration takes office, could a new administration change it back and once again make it very limited? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. And already, Vice President Biden said that he will once again limit the exemption, and Little Sisters will find themselves back in court. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. They'll find themselves back in court if he comes into office. Secondly, the woman who is running with former Vice President Biden, Kamala Harris, has shown a tremendous anti-Catholic bias. What do I mean by that? Not too long ago, there was a judicial hearing for someone to be confirmed to an appeals court in Nevada. Judge Brian Bucher was the gentleman's name, is the gentleman's name. And guess what she implied? That because he was a member of the Knights of Columbus, he might not be qualified to sit on the bench. There is no religious test. There is no religious test for anyone to hold public office in the United States, and that's in the Constitution. We are also very much aware that we're going to be having now a new Supreme Court justice. And it looks like it can very well be a Catholic. There are two women who are Catholic who are potential nominees. One is Justice Amy Coney Barrett, an outstanding woman, and the other one is Barbara Lagoya from here, right here in Florida, the 11th Circuit. And both of these women are Catholic. We are assured that Amy Coney Barrett is a devout Catholic, belongs to a prayer group, pro-life. And I'm also told by Representative Matt Gaetz here in Florida that Barbara Lagoya is also pro-life. Some of you might recall when Judge Barrett was being considered for her present position, that she was told by Dianne Feinstein that she basically said she is just oozing with doctrine. In other words, you're too Catholic. You're too Catholic, and that's going to affect the way you adjudicate. Now, do you think that there's an anti-Catholic bias? Let's see what happens now. Now is the test, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the test. Once the hearings begin, and if we find that certain senators, like Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Feinstein, revert back to what they said before about a religious test, then the bishops of this country have an obligation to tell their people that they cannot vote for anyone who is an enemy of the Catholic Church and denying Catholic their rights. Now, how about that? That's the angle that we have to use now, because it is the denial of our constitutional rights. And these people then become enemies of Catholics and enemies of the Catholic Church. This might very well bring it out into the open. A book was written about a number of years ago, 2003, and it's written by a great professor, Philip Jenkins. And the name of the book is Anti-Catholicism, the Last Acceptable Prejudice. Anti-Catholicism, the Last Acceptable Prejudice. And he was right. But Catholics have kept their mouths shut for too long. And the bishops have not challenged politicians enough when there are attacks on the church and when there are attacks on Catholic institutions. Okay, what else do we have? We know also that Kamala Harris did her darndest to prevent Catholic healthcare hospital systems from surviving in California. Is that anti-Catholic bias? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so these are the issues, ladies and gentlemen, that we have to pay very close attention to in this election. If indeed they show their true colors and they come out as being anti-Catholic, denying Catholics their constitutional rights, denying Christians their rights to open their churches, denying Christians their rights to not permit abortifacients, contraception, abortion in their healthcare plans, we will then have a moral obligation to speak the truth to power. And not just a moral obligation, but an obligation as American citizens to stand up and to defend the Constitution. Now, a lot of you are asking for the question about, can someone say you cannot vote for a pro-choice politician? Now, pay close attention to what I am going to say. This is very, very important. In order for someone to be excommunicated, they have to have a formal role in the crime of abortion, a formal role. Many of the theologians and many of the bishops, including some of the highest people in the Vatican, say they do not have a formal role. They are not proximate enough to the abortion. They simply are saying that they are working in a government, in a system, in a legal society which permits abortion, and they are only allowing the law to be carried out. And that's, that's weasel words. I'm personally against it. Came from Mario Cuomo. Same thing with Joe Biden. But, that's what the law is, and I am going to have to support the law. Problem is now, we want to even expand the law. It's not just abortion in utero, it's partial birth abortion. And now it's even the case of infanticide. And so, we've stretched a lot now, and yet we cannot get a definitive statement from the hierarchy as to whether or not a Catholic could vote or should not vote for these politicians. My most educated opinion is this. I think that if we stick with traditional moral Catholic theology, what we'll have to say is it probably does not constitute formal cooperation. Therefore, we cannot make that statement. However, now this is the however. Some of you are going, no, he's giving in. No, I'm not giving in. However, what the bishops can do is, because these people have become a public scandal, because they are showing an animus toward their church, because they are confusing people, what we can do is deny them the sacraments. And some bishops have already done that. They cannot receive Holy Communion, and that comes under Canon 915. And Pope Benedict, when he was at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, said that these people should not receive communion, and these people should be barred from the sacramental life of the church. Now, let me give you the big one over here. And this is where I do hold the hierarchy very responsible, very responsible. Even if we cannot get formal cooperation, I'm going to say, I think there's at least material cooperation there by their voting and by the statements they make. They're enabling it to happen. But in a material way, it's like somebody, the taxi cab driver that's just driving you to the Planned Parenthood, and he really didn't wish the event to happen. So if you're following that, what the bishops should do and haven't done is to deny Catholic politicians a Catholic funeral, a public Catholic funeral, because some can say they repented at the last moment, they went to confession. There is no good reason why the church has to have a public funeral, have a church filled with people and reporters, and have politicians singing the praise of a pro-abortion colleague and having pro-abortion politicians in the sanctuary. That's what happened at the death of Teddy Kennedy. And that is a scandal. So, denial of communion, denial of a public church funeral. You want to have a funeral? Close the doors, have it for the family if the person went to confession and was truly sorry for the scandal that they gave. That's the best answer I can give. The route to go in this election, is very, very clear. It's anti-Catholicism, it's anti-religious freedom, denying Catholics their rights, denying the First Amendment. And that's where our religious freedom is based in the First Amendment. You have power, my friends. You have power. And that's why we're here tonight with Catholic Vote. What we want you to do is to make sure you sign up for Catholic Vote, and then to go out and to tell your friends that they have to vote. You saw the numbers, 36% of Catholics didn't vote. Imagine how many fundamentalist Protestants, evangelical Protestants, Bible-based Protestants did not vote either. Orthodox Jewish people, how many of them did not vote either? You have friends, call up your friends. You don't have to be confrontational. Say, hey, did you know that Father ORSI said religious freedom is at stake here? Did you know there's anti-Catholic prejudice? Did you know they're denying Catholics the rights of an American citizen? That they're giving them a test, a religious test to enter into public office? Did you know that? Did you know that they're trying to still hurt the Little Sisters of the Poor, one of the finest group of women I've ever met in my life, what they do to take care of the sick and the poor? Did you know that? Okay, tell your friends. Get together with Knights of Columbus. You're a brother knight? I'm a brother knight. Our council discusses it. Tell your friends. Call up each other. Zoom each other. Virtually call each other. Get together. Stay a million miles apart with this coronavirus. Meet, have a rosary meeting, have cake and coffee, a couple of miles apart. I'm just kidding, have the cake and coffee, pass it out, talk about what's going on. Unless people talk and come together as a people with a civic mind and a Catholic mind and a religious mind and a morality, they'll never be able to get the strength that they need to fight what is going on in this country. They are trying to tear this country down. Abortion is the wedge issue. That's why this is the issue that continually comes up when we get to these Supreme Court nominations. Why? The wedge issue is this. You know, and I know that there is a baby in the womb. Way back, they would say, oh, it's only a mass of flesh. It's really nothing. We have the ultrasound. We have the sonogram. Oh, no, that's a baby. No doubt about it. But then somebody says, well, no, it's not a baby. Oh, yeah? You know why? Because if I can deny that that's a baby, I can deny that you're human too. It's going to start with the sick and the elderly. They're already doing that to the sick and the elderly, talking about euthanasia, assisted suicide. We had that in Michigan with Dr. Kevorkian. We still have that today. Then what happens? Then those people that are undesirable, those people who have some kind of a deformity, some kind of a mental issue, those people who are weak. And then finally, the people who don't think like the elites want them to think. That might be you and me. So this election is about our life, and it's about the life of your children. So please, please, get on the phone, get on the internet, get on the Zoom, text somebody, call up your friends, call up your Aunt Lucy. Hey, Aunt Lucy, did you vote? Oh, Aunt Lucy, you never vote. You got to vote this time. I'm coming to your house. I'm going to bring you a write-in ballot. I'm going to take you to the polling place, because the life of each individual human being is at stake in this election. It's not just the babies. It's all of us. Okay, I'm open to questions now.
Father, this is just one reason we love you so much. That was amazing. I have a question, and I will just say, I'd like to start it off, and then if there are any other questions, maybe you could formulate them and we could ask Father. But Father, my background is also educational administration. And so I'd like to ask, what is at stake with regards to Catholic education for this election?
Okay, let me be very clear with you. Catholic education is in trouble because of the costs. And you know that a lot of Catholic schools are closing. Now, what we have to do is we have to continually press for school choice and make sure that the Catholic schools are included in that school choice. And you know, one of the members of our own state of Michigan, Betsy DeVos, is trying very hard to make sure that school choice is available. So please, please remember the importance of school choice, because that might very well be the way in which we preserve Catholic education. Also, I'm going to tell you very clearly, I'm not always happy with some of the things that people learn in Catholic schools or don't learn, especially for our Catholic colleges and universities. Beware of what is being taught. Get yourself a catechism of the Catholic Church. Please get a catechism of the Catholic Church. Always make sure that what you're hearing is consistent with what the church teaches. Parents should take care of their religious education of their children at home. Get yourself a Baltimore catechism. Have your kids memorize it. It's important. Memorizing is very important. You know, Judge Barrett said this, and that's why I'm really praying that this woman becomes a justice. She said, my first obligation is not to be a lawyer. My first obligation is to know, love, and serve God. Where did that come from? The Baltimore Catechism, right?
God bless you, Father. And what about the whole gender ideology?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are a couple of things missing. Number one is reason. Number two is the Bible. And number three is common sense. Let's go through the first one. Reason. Oh, I am biologically a boy, but I decide now I want to be a girl. Now, is that reasonable? No. Okay? Uh, Theologically, God made them what? Male and female. He did not make people 100 varieties. And honestly, they are now talking about 100 varieties of people and pansexualism. Whatever you want, whatever you want. It's contrary to God's law. It's contrary to the laws of nature. So people might think to themselves, well, this is really crazy stuff. But crazy like a fox. Why? What do you do when you begin to confuse people psychosexually? Well, you begin to destroy the family, the natural order of things, the nuclear family. And that's why, Johnny had two daddies and Minnie had two mommies. And that's why today have a whole variety of different kinds of created sexualities that even have the schools bowing to this behavior that basically what it does is it destroys the structures of society. That's what it destroys, the structures of society. When you can have a boy deciding he's a girl and he's going into the girl's dressing room because he says he's a girl, there's something radically wrong there. That boy might not be that stupid, but the school sure is for allowing him to do it.